I'm going to tell you how and why Michigan will win the national championship tonight against Washington. Plus, Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Pac-12 will join us with his thoughts and his predictions as well. It's a big one. Don't go anywhere. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate it. And you know we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat over 50 infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Going to tell you how Michigan wins this game tonight. Plus, Locked On Pac-12 Spencer McLaughlin will give us his predictions and whether this is a bittersweet day for the Pac-12 and Washington. And of course, we'll have our Big Ten top 10 as well. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get this episode of this podcast as soon as it's available each and every day, and all the other episodes as well. And one more note, just like we did last week after the Rose Bowl, as soon as the national championship game is over with tonight, we will come back on here on YouTube live for all of your reaction and my reaction immediately, probably about 11 o'clock Eastern, somewhere around that. Please feel free to join us for that. All right, here's how Michigan wins this football game. And then Jim Harbaugh rides off into the sunset to do whatever it is he's going to do at that point. Look, if you've watched Michigan at all this year, any of Michigan games, one game, all of their games, and then you look back after the game and you say, wait a minute, I'm not surprised that they won, but I am surprised by the margin of victory of how they won. Because you look back and they probably didn't have a lot of 75-yard bombs or 50-yard runs. Admittedly, there just isn't a lot of flash to this football team. They're not explosive, but they're just more powerful, and they're smarter, and they're steadier than everybody else in football. And they don't give you second chances as well. They average about 2 penalties a game, and they rarely turn the ball over. So you will not get extra possessions against this Michigan football team. They defeat you not with one cut, one punch. They cut you by a death of 1,000 cuts is how they kill you. That's how they put you away. And just when you're grasping for air and they're strangling you out, and then you're done. That's it. That's how they do it. You take one last quick look at the scoreboard before you fade to black, and Michigan's up by 30 points. That's what they do. At least that's how most of their games have gone this season, and that is their philosophy and how they will try to beat Washington tonight. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're going to beat Washington by 30 points. Far from it. You know, as the competition got tougher for Michigan as the season went on, the games got closer and closer. Let's take a look at them for an example, because we can use them into how we look at tonight's game as well. Penn State, for example, put up a huge fight against Michigan, but ultimately they were no match for the Wolverines. In fact, Michigan didn't even throw the ball in the second half. In fact, they didn't even throw the ball for 32 straight plays dating to the end of the first half. Now, it turns out they had to because J.J. McCarthy was a little banged up. And the fact that they could do it because they had to do it was astonishing. You look at their Maryland game late in the year. The Terps made Michigan earn their win that day on the road for the Wolverines. It was their 1,000th win, you'll remember, in school history. But that game was close in the second half. The Terps had a variety of weapons this year, as do the Washington Huskies. And I think that's what makes tonight's game so interesting. Another game to look at that was close for Michigan, of course, was the Ohio State game at the end of the year. Came down to the final possession. And the Michigan defense, they stepped up and they got the Kyle McCord interception, which essentially derailed his college career. And after the game, Buccaneers wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. said he had never seen a defense cover him like that ever in his entire great career. The question is whether Jesse Minter's defense for Michigan can cover not one, but 3 future NFL wide receivers all at the same time. Maybe not. It's a lot to ask. And one final game of note, of course, the closest would be Michigan's game against Alabama. The Rose Bowl last week. Michigan, when they fell behind in the second half, it was the first time that they had been behind the entire season. I mean, imagine that for a minute. Just the whole season, just pretty much cruise control at that point. So, and look, they won that battle, right? They fought back. They sent the game into overtime and they won. And it seemed like they got super confident that they were going to do that. They were comfortable. You're not going to rattle this Michigan football team. But in fact, I will argue that it was special teams that allowed that game to even be close. You know, the missed point or the missed field goal, the missed extra point, the two muff punt returns were uncharacteristically sloppy for Michigan. Remember how just a minute ago I told you they don't ever make mistakes and beat themselves? That was the lone exception this year. Okay, that was very rusty. I know both sides hadn't played in a month, and I get it. But that was a very rare. If that was your first look at Michigan football this year, that's not how they play games. They don't allow mistakes to allow the other team to remain in the game. And they made those mistakes on that particular day, and it almost cost them their season. In fact, I've argued that the kid that muffed a punt into the end zone at the end of the game, getting the ball back out to the half-yard line is probably the most valuable play of the entire season, making up for a mistake by getting it back out. A safety there wins the game from Alabama. Doesn't even go into that's it. Doesn't go to overtime. But anyway, so take that as a backdrop now as we look forward to tonight's game against the Washington Huskies and this national championship. Because bottom line, here's how I see this game going, okay? The most points that Michigan has given up all season has been 24. They've done it twice. I think Washington will score a little bit more than that. I mean, it's not just me. I mean, even Vegas has the over/under. FanDuel, our friends there, have this at a 55-point game. That means Washington has to score a bit, I think, on this ball game. And I think that will happen. I don't think Michigan will be able to shut down these receivers the way they've shut down and Michael Penix Jr. the way they've shut down teams all season long. But we'll continue to dive into that. The other thing is that I think we need to watch, and we'll know, I think, fairly early on in this game, running back Dillon Johnson. Remember, he's a 1,000-yard rusher for Washington, good blocking back there on passing plays for Michael Penix. Injured himself in the Oregon State game back in November, had been nursing it, had all of December to rest, came back, and at the end of that Texas game last week at the Sugar Bowl, re-injured himself. He is going to give it a go tonight, okay? He is going to play. Can he be effective? Does he risk re-injuring himself? I think that is a big key, because if he's not effective or if he can't go, they really don't have anybody to replace him. And Michigan can sit back and handle the wide receivers and not worry so much about the run. At that point, that would be a big advantage for Jesse Minter and the Michigan defense. So if they could just sit back and zone coverage all day and worry about the receivers and let their big, beefy defensive linemen get in there and put some pressure on Michael Penix, I think that's a big key to this game here tonight. So we'll see what happens there. Now, on the other side, let's look at Washington's defense. Okay, the one thing they've done is they have had a little bit of trouble against the run this year. You and I all know that is Michigan's strength for sure. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Blake Corum has been fantastic. He was fantastic in the Alabama game of the Rose Bowl. He's just been fantastic his entire career at Michigan, and he's behind that powerful offensive line. Don't forget, they lost their best offensive lineman in the Ohio State game, Zach Zinter, but they just replaced him with guys. I mean, they're not throwing freshmen and sophomores in there to replace them. Far from it. You look at the starting offensive line for Michigan tonight in this game, and it will have three 5-year seniors, grad students, and one senior. That's what I mean. They're just experienced. Everybody up there's got 35 to 40 games experience. It is a big deal, but it's not a big deal. They're able to overcome it. I'm sure they would love to have Zach Zinter in there as well. So they're just deep. And because of that, I think ultimately you can look for Michigan to have at least 4 6 to 8 minute scoring drives in here, just ground and pound and chewing up the clock. And I think at the end of the day, Michigan will end up scoring in the low 30s. I think Washington will score points in this game in the high 20s. So that's where I think this game ends up being. So those are my initial thoughts. My final thoughts, really, here we are finally on this day. And I would love to know what you think. You can hit me up on Twitter, X at Talk Big 10, comments on YouTube. Also check out our website, talkbig10, 10.com. Love to hear from you on all of that. Now, you've heard my opinion. I get your opinions on the comments all the time. Spencer McLaughlin will join us from Locked On Pac-12. He follows Washington very closely. He's coming up next right here on Locked On Big 10. The NFL regular season is over, right? It's a wrap. But the playoffs are coming. So there's still time to get in the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And it is a ton of fun, and everybody is in on it. And you need to be on it too. It's fun. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways. In addition to point spreads and over-unders, they have live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab that they have. You can make a parlay and a parlay hub that they have all organized for you. It's the best way to find the popular ones. All of that. And my advice to you during these playoff games, a little tighter, possessions more valuable, maybe some unders hit on the over-unders, if that's the kind of thing you like. So nevertheless, check that out. And you could go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. It's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Big 10 your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe down below and share and follow and like Locked On Big 10, your team every day. We're joined by Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Pac-12. We got ourselves a big national championship game later tonight. Also a reminder, don't forget, in addition to this podcast, after the game, we're going live on this YouTube channel for all your reaction. Going to be kind of late, but that's okay. It's what we do. Spencer, how are you?
Ready for football. I am ready. I'm ready for football every second of the day. You know how sad I'm about to be after this national championship game? There's going to be no college football for 8 months. Eight months, Craig. It's a tragedy. So I'm ready to enjoy every second of the game, and then we dive into the offseason.
Well, let's enjoy this game with Washington tonight, because the next time they play Michigan, it'll just be a regular Saturday afternoon in the Big Ten instead of a national championship. This has got to be a bittersweet day, this championship game here tonight. I think the Pac-12 season this season was the best I could remember. And now it's going to culminate maybe with Washington entering the Big Ten as the defending national champions. If they can win this, that would be pretty cool. But the Pac-12, for all practical purposes, is over tonight. What are your feelings right now?
I mean, it sucks. And it's just underscoring more and more as Washington has made the championship game that this doesn't make any sense, that the league is just going to cease to exist. You think about the league that could have been had USC and to a lesser extent UCLA and Fox not decided, yeah, we want to go over to the Big Ten and make this happen and whatnot. And then, of course, that led to Oregon and Washington one day following. Then everyone else decided, well, and Colorado left, but then Oregon and Washington were going to be the, banner carrying institutions of the new pack. And I think it could have worked. It could have worked, but they weren't able to get a good enough television deal. And Oregon and Washington decided, nope, we can get into the Big Ten, so we're going to go do that. But you think about the league, like the actual league with the LA schools in it and what that conference would look like, it would feel like the SEC, not because it's, in the same geographic area. Obviously, it's not. These conferences were made in a time when we actually cared about geography and regionality, but we're throwing that to the wind, much to my chagrin, but I digress. You would have a conference going into next year in which you would have Oregon off a 12-win season, having lost 3 straight games to Washington, all of them by 3 points. You'd have Washington potentially off a national championship win, at least off a national championship game appearance. You'd have Utah, who won the 2 previous Pac-12 championships before the 2023 season. You'd have USC trying to have a bounce back under Lincoln Riley, which is a big name. You'd have Chip Kelly still down at UCLA. Jonathan Smith would probably still be at Oregon State, building them into something that we know was a really good football program, and we'll see what they can do with Trent Bray at the helm. And then you would have this school down in Tucson known as Arizona with this guy, Jed Fish, who's a fantastic football coach. How many teams did I just list where you could make the argument they build a conference championship caliber team in 2024? It all would have been there. And, for the conference champion to get an auto berth to the playoff would have been, a really exciting setup. And instead, everybody's going their separate ways. And I think that is just a tragedy. And it's the world that we live in, but it's certainly not the world that I prefer.
Yeah, I really want to dive into the game between Washington and Michigan, but I want to ask one last question. Had this season happened last season, would Commissioner Kliavkoff have been able to get a humongous TV deal, or are we just out of TV networks and there was no space for the Pac-12?
It's a great hypothetical. And by the way, I mentioned all those storylines and didn't even mention what some people would consider the storyline in college football, which is Deion Sanders and what he had for breakfast this morning. So I think that for the league, you look at the television numbers they put up this year. Yeah, Deion was leading the way because Colorado was such a big story and such a surprise to so many people early in the year. Then they got a harsh dose of reality once conference play began. And I think that, again, is a testament to how good the league was. And I think that if this season had happened in 2022, there is a solid chance the league stays together. But is it a guarantee? No. But what you would have had is there was an ESPN deal that was proposed to the conference for all 10 teams, including Colorado, for $30 million per school per year. And Utah's president got with one of his professors, decided the league was worth $50 million a year without the Los Angeles television market in a significant way. And ESPN said, thank you, come again, that's not happening. And rather than trying to get somewhere in the middle there, which could have maybe kept the league alive, even without USC and UCLA, they remained too steadfast there and they wanted to get to certain numbers. And if you had a year like this in 2022, I don't know how ESPN wouldn't go offer with the LA schools $50 million a year, but it's all hypothetical at this point because that's where it's gone. But it certainly does make you think because this conference is so good.
Yeah. Certainly. And this is worthy of another topic for another day. So let's get to tonight's game with Washington and Michigan. And, I'm an Indiana grad. We used to have a quarterback by the name of Michael Penix Jr. He was pretty good, but he wasn't this good. He's the most accurate passer in college football. What happened in your opinion? How did he take this next step last year and, of course, this year?
Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and 3 wide receivers. That's the answer. You look at the way this offense is designed, and it's perfect for what he does well, which is throw the ball down the field. And I remember watching him at Indiana, and during the COVID year, Indiana was inside the top 20, which is, as Big Ten fans know, not something that happens very often. So I remember him having some playmaking ability, but he was really most known for never finishing a season. He hadn't played a full season of college football, if memory serves, because he kept getting hurt. So one of my, most freezing cold takes of all time was if Michael Penix stays healthy in 2022, Washington is, maybe a 6-6, maybe 7-win team, but probably like a 6-6 kind of team. But I don't think he's going to be healthy. I think Washington has it down here. Yeah, that's just not the case. I mean, he and Kalen DeBoer see football the same way. Their offense coordinator, Ryan Grubb, calls plays in a way that allows for him to be at his best. And you pair him with not 1, not 2, but 3 NFL wide receivers and a very good number 4 in Jeremy Bernard, by the way, who came over from Michigan State. And you have an offense in which he just has supreme confidence that if he throws a ball to a specific spot on a given play, his guy is going to get there and make the catch. And I think that's been the biggest shift. He had some guys who put up good yardage numbers and did some nice things at Indiana. They were not Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. Rome Odunze is a top 10 pick. McMillan and Polk are both NFL draft picks and NFL caliber wide receivers. So I think that for Penix, that's kind of been the key, is this perfect marriage of the offensive philosophy with the personnel has elevated his confidence. And then he's had a great offensive line for each of the last 2 years that has allowed him to stay healthy, where he didn't have that as much at Indiana, and he had to run around a little more.
All right. How will that accuracy look tonight? When you and Washington get used to it, coming to the Big Ten, the number one scoring defense in the country is Michigan. By the way, Ohio State's 2, Penn State's 3, Iowa's 4, 6 of the top 20 are Big Ten teams. It's going to be a bit of a different style. Are there enough good defensive teams in the Pac-12? Well, I don't think there are. Can you think of a lot or any Pac-12 teams defensively that can mirror anything close to what Michigan will bring at them? I guess that's the better way to ask the question.
Yeah, Oregon and Utah, or Oregon and Utah both. I think Oregon State's defense was not as good as last year, but it was still a solid unit. And you look at what Oregon State did against Washington last year, and they almost beat them. They should have beaten them in Seattle, but Washington, as they always have done for the last 2 seasons, they just found a way to win the game. And that wasn't a high-scoring game. And this year's game against Oregon State wasn't high-scoring. They won both of those games. But I think you look at Oregon's defense, you got NFL talent, you got high-level coaching with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy and Chris Hampton, who came over from Tulane. They had great personnel, all-conference players. They had depth. I mean, it was a great Oregon defense. Washington put up over 30 points each time they played them, and they were at full strength for those games. Washington was not. I think a lot of national pundits or fans are looking at Washington's box scores too much and saying, "Oh, what happened against Arizona State? What happened here?" Not recognizing that they were dealing with legitimate sickness and physical health concerns with some of their key players. Jalen McMillan missed multiple games. Michael Penix was not 100%. They had the flu running through their entire team, and it was ravaging what they were able to do. At full strength, this is a team that put up 30 points on Oregon twice. Not once, but twice this year. That's an Oregon defense that allowed fewer than 20 points a game. It's a Washington team that scored 35 points against a Utah team that's always good at defense. That's their calling card. So I think that those two teams compare to what the Big Ten has defensively, and I don't think the Big Ten has anything like what Washington's got on the offensive side of the ball.
I should mention to my Big Ten friends that are watching, as I listed that 6 Big Ten teams are ranked in the top 20 for scoring defense. Oregon is actually a top 10 team, so it's a good comparison. Let's talk about whether this game is going to be a shootout. We know that Michigan likes to grind it, 6, 7, 8-minute drives. Blake Corum, if there is one weakness, in my opinion, on Washington's defense, it is against the run. How do you think Washington will do handling Blake Corum all night long?
Well, I think Michigan is going to be more committed to the run than Texas was. I mean, Steve Sarkisian has had a propensity to just want to throw the football, even if the run is working exceptionally well. And Texas ran the ball very well against Washington. They also fumbled twice. I don't expect Michigan to do that. They've been very good, as you know, at not getting in their own way, aside from a disastrous kicking game. From time to time. But I think that for Blake Corum, he could very well get his yards, but the question is how much can Michigan sustain drives? How regularly can they do that? How long can they do that for to keep Penix on the sidelines? Because I really don't think that you can stop them. I don't think you can try and contain them, hold them to field goals, whatever. I don't think anyone can full on stop them. And the only way that you could maybe do that is if Michigan possesses the ball for, you got 60 minutes in the game. Michigan would need to control it for 35 to 40, I think, to hold Washington under 30 points.
And look, if Vegas is putting the number at 55 points, Vegas thinks Washington will score some points against Michigan. Michigan's never given up more than 24 points a game. They've done it twice. I think Washington can get over that by how much is going to determine this football game. Speaking of the running game on the other side, Dillon Johnson, 1,000-yard rusher, 16 touchdowns, playing through an injury. I don't know how he's going to play. They say he's going to go. What if he can't, or what if he's not effective and Washington's only option is to just throw the ball?
Well, I think the guy they have behind him, whose name is escaping me right now, he's done some good things. But remember, Dillon Johnson was actually the number 2 running back coming into this season. Washington starter got hurt, but I'd heard from our Locked On Huskies host that he actually liked Dillon Johnson more. That proved to be a good take. Johnson was second team All Pac-12. His impact in the ground game certainly would be felt if he's not at 100% or not able to go at all, or if he re-aggravates the injury in this game. My hot take is that it's more important in the passing game. Not because he catches the ball, because he pass blocks.
Yeah.
Washington loves to do deep shots that are predicated on max protection concepts. So even if Michigan brings pressure, Dillon Johnson, go watch the Pac-12 championship game against Oregon. And look at the number of times that guys like Jeffrey Bassa and Evan Williams, who are all conference defensive players, were picked up in the blitz by Dillon Johnson, and that gave Penix time to stay in the pocket and throw the ball down the field. That is perhaps his greatest trait. He's an excellent runner. He's an all-conference caliber back for a reason. He was second team this year. I think that he is not appreciated enough for what he does with the protection concepts. And the running backs and tight ends are not used a lot in this Washington pass game. They are used to protect. They're used to keep Penix in the pocket, keep him comfortable. He'll have these deep drops, and then he'll just throw it down the field. It'll be right on the guy's hands. I think that's where Dillon Johnson comes into play.
All right, I'm going to say Michigan's going to grind out some drives in this thing. They're going to take care of the football. They don't get penalized. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to say Michigan in the low 30s, Washington in the high 20s. What do you say? Give you the final word.
Washington 35, Michigan 27. Final score.
Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Pac-12. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, anytime.
And, of course, to our audience, don't forget, we, Locked On Big Ten, going live immediately after the game. And also, don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, our 24/7 sports streaming on YouTube. It's a new channel. It's great. All of our shows, Spencer's show, my show, it's always on there. Check it out and go ahead and subscribe to that as well. All the final word on tonight's game and our Big Ten Top 10. That's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. And I want to tell you about Jace case. You know, I know that we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy things that are going on in life. But if we could talk just a minute about preparing for real life, if you will. You know, according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. And that's scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than, you know, being a parent, your kid's sick, you can't get them medicine, right? It's a serious issue, and thankfully we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. You get a Jace case. Here's one right here. Jace case, got antibiotics inside right there, right to your door. It's a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinuses, skin infections, among other things as well. And this stuff can happen to anybody. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code Locked On to get $20 off of your order. So check it out. Jace Medical. That's at jacemedical.com. All right. At the end of the show on Mondays, we like to take a look at my top 10 observations from around the Big Ten over the weekend, and we'll have a final word on tonight's game in just a second. I'm going to put this on screen so you can check this out and put it on full screen. And here we go. Top 10. I want to give a shout out to the Wisconsin Lady Badgers and Sarah Williams over the weekend. 27 points at a 67-61 win over Illinois in that game. Also, Penn State's Ace Baldwin Jr., 25 points in a win over Michigan on Sunday. Pretty good effort there. And at number 8, Wisconsin basketball. Give them a shout out. 13 of 26 from Threeland and a win over Nebraska. Also, we have at number 7, Iowa's Peyton Sanford. Peyton Sanford. 5 3-pointers of 24 points and an 86-77 win over Rutgers to get their first Big Ten win of the season. Get the monkey off the back there. At number 6, how about a shout out to Ohio State? They got quarterback Will Howard to hit the transfer portal and come in. We didn't know what was going on over there. And in fact, last I heard, Will Howard was going to Southern Cal. This is the Kansas State quarterback. So an experienced quarterback with 1 year of eligibility left coming in to play for Ryan Day. That would give recruit Aaron Nolan a chance to get comfortable and before he takes over the offense for the Buckeyes. So that was a big pickup for them. At number 5, how about Jim Harbaugh for Michigan on Media Day? He talked about the importance of winning a championship is to be able to call yourself a national champion, to have your parents call you, the kids on the team, a national champion, to have grandparents say, my grandkid's a national champion. Typical Jim Harbaugh type speak. Very excited for this opportunity for his team. At number 4, we're going to give a shout out to Purdue Trey Kaufman-Renn. Why? Because on Friday night against number 9 Illinois, he stepped up. Illinois said, we are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Zach Edey and held Zach Edey to 10 points. Well, Trey Kaufman-Renn stepped up and had a season high 23 points to help him out and to get the win. At number 3, a shout out to Indiana's Xavier Johnson. He recently came back from injury for the Hoosiers, taking on Ohio State this past weekend. Now, the previous game, the Hoosiers had 29 turnovers. Unbelievable. And then he came in, he had 0 in this particular game. Or they gave up 29 points off turnovers. I want to correct myself there. But he came in and had 0 turnovers against Ohio State. Very good in the 71-65 win over the Buckeyes. And a couple of shout outs to the ladies at the top of our list. At number 2, the Indiana Lady Hoosiers. Mackenzie Holmes at 22. Sydney Parrish made 6 3-pointers. Sarah Scalia had 5 3-pointers. And it was the 12th straight win for the 14th ranked Hoosiers that beat Nebraska on Sunday. And at number 1, Iowa's Caitlin Clark, another phenomenal performance. Her 14th career triple-double, had 29 points, 10 assists, and 10 rebounds in a 103-69 win over Rutgers. And speaking of Iowa and the Lady Hawkeyes and Indiana and the Lady Hoosiers, big matchup. Fox does primetime college basketball games on Saturday nights, right? They're doing a women's game. They're doing the Iowa-Indiana game this Saturday. So check it out on national TV. But that is a quick look at our top 10 observations from over the weekend. I wanted to share those with you at this point. So, all right, time for a final word here. Tonight, the national championship, football, Washington, Michigan. Going to be a battle between Michigan and its ability to impose its will and its style, the ground and pound, and that's its path to victory. Or will Michael Penix Jr. light up the scoreboard with all of his fancy passing, with all of his wide receivers against the number 1 scoring defense of the Michigan Wolverines? That's it in a nutshell. I want to thank Spencer from Locked On Pac-12 for joining us a few minutes ago. Always enjoy talking to him. Don't forget, after the game, we will go live right here on Locked On Big Ten on YouTube for your reaction and my reaction. Looking forward to all of that. In the meantime, feel free to get a hold of me, of course, at Twitter, at Talk Big Ten, number 10, and also on our website, talkbig10number10.com. You can join me there, and comments here on YouTube. By the way, go to our website at talkbig10number10.com. Got a lot of stuff there for you, merch, ticket information. All of our podcasts have all gone there, so go check that out as well. All right, and one other reminder for Locked On Sports Today, the other 24/7 sports streaming channel that Locked On started a few weeks ago that puts all of our shows on there in a constant loop. It's fantastic. Check it out. After you subscribe to Locked On Big Ten, go ahead and subscribe to that. You'll be glad you did. All right, that will do it. It's time for the big game. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you right afterward. That will do it. For Locked On Big Ten, I'm Craig Sheeman.